Okay, so now that World War II is finally over, and we've agreed on what exactly is going to happen to help rebuild Europe and all these other countries that have been in so much trouble, it's time to see a new sort of power structure start to be put into place. Now, the majority of the world's power by the end of World War II is now in the hands of two countries, the United States and the USSR. This is when we officially mark both of these countries as reaching what we would call superpower status. So we are officially a world superpower, and the USSR is officially a world superpower. It's pretty much just the two of us at this point. So since we've taken on such power there, that comes a lot of responsibility, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So we want to make sure that we're using that in a positive way. So we're trying to help get everybody back on track. So the first thing we're going to be trying to do is stabilize the economy. So we're going to help to fund we're going to help to start the International Monetary Fund as well as the World Bank. And now the U.S. is actually going to front most of the cash for both of these organizations, which sucks for us, but it does help to take some pressure off of us in case any future problems occur. There's an international economic organization designed to help in problems like that people might not necessarily have to come straight to us with problems like that. We're also going to sign something called the GATT, the G-A-T-T, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. We made this agreement in 1948 with a lot of other countries, and it's basically us agreeing to reduce tariffs globally. The last time we saw any attention put on tariffs was when we saw the Hawley-Smoot tariff bill at the very beginning of the Great Depression send the rest of the world into a depression as well. So we're sort of trying to reverse that by getting the entire world to reduce their tariffs. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to help found and lead the United Nations. So the United Nations, also known as the UN, is an intergovernmental organization basically designed to keep world peace. So the UN is actually founded in April of 1945, before the war is 100% over. A bunch of delegates from all over the world meet in San Francisco to write a charter for basically a new UN, a new League of Nations, so to speak. And the Senate of the United States overwhelmingly votes in favor of joining this. And so the UN is going to set their headquarters in New York City, and that is still where the headquarters is. And the UN is really based on cooperation, not equality. That's really something to keep in mind when you are thinking about the UN. All countries in the UN are not created or given equal power. There are definitely countries in the UN who have more power than others. The United States, for example, we have a lot of power in the UN. Russia, Great Britain, all of these countries, China today has a lot of power in the UN. But there are other countries involved, and it's all about all of us cooperating with each other. So we do have 5 countries we call the Big Five, who all get permanent seats on the Security Council, the UN Security Council, which is sort of like the most important piece of the UN. And these 5 countries all have a seat on this council forever, no matter what. And it's us, Russia, Great Britain, France, and China. All 5 of these countries have a seat on the Security Council today, and they also get like something that's essentially like a super veto, and any one of these countries can veto something in the Security Council, and it only takes one no from one of those countries, so giving all of us quite a bit of power. In 1948, we also helped the UN to write and sign the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So all of this is us stepping into this new role of global leadership, and we're really going to prosper from it early on. We're going to get a lot of good things, and we're going to be able to give a lot of good things because of this new role that we're taking on. Now, back in Europe, they are rebuilding from what has been an absolutely horrible war, as well as from the Holocaust. And the actions taken by the Nazi Party violated something called the Geneva Convention. If you've ever heard the Geneva Convention, it was basically an agreement made by many countries years and years before this on what would be classified as war crimes and crimes against humanity. And obviously the Nazis broke all of them. And so the Nazi officials were put on trial for crimes against humanity. And those trials are going to take place in Nuremberg, Germany. They're called the Nuremberg trials. Prosecutors mostly focused on the atrocities committed during the Holocaust, like all the really horrible things that happened, not just to Jewish people, but to Catholics and the mentally handicapped, and all sorts of different people who were abused during the Holocaust. And the Nazis' main defense was that they were just simply following orders and that Hitler was to blame for all the actual crimes. He's easy to blame because he's dead. But the judges, luckily, didn't really buy all of that, and pretty much everyone was found guilty. Most of them were hung and executed, but some were given life in prison. Now, some Nazis do escape, and they're going to be hunted all over the world for the rest of time. Essentially, there are still people out there even today. Not too long ago, I think just a couple of years ago, they found a Nazi who had escaped trial, and they, sent him to Europe and put his butt on trial and sent him to jail. So there are still Nazi hunters out there even today. Now, even though the war is over, this doesn't mean that, we've entered this state of, utopian, egalitarian, wonderful rainbows and sunshine. Not everyone's happy with each other. There's a lot of hard feelings, even among the winners, right? We aren't all always going to be on the same page. And there are definitely some tensions exiting the end of World War II. So at the end of the war, if you remember, I said Germany had been divided into 4 military zones, each controlled by a different independent power. So one for the Soviet Union, one for France, one for Great Britain, and one for the United States. Now, eventually, France and Great Britain gave theirs over to us. But even then, when France and Great Britain were in control, the three of us are all using democracy as the basis of government there in the western side of Germany. So West Germany and East Germany will become 2 separate countries because they're functioning under 2 different political and governmental structures. So West Germany will technically be called the Federal Republic of Germany. And then East Germany is going to be the German Democratic Republic. Don't let the word republic fool you. It is communism in place in East Germany. It's like today, the People's Republic of China. That's a communist country, but they use the word republic anyway. So remember, I told you Berlin, the capital of Germany, is also going to be split into 4 zones, even though it's geographically located in the Soviet zone. So it's clear that the Soviet Union and the rest of the Allies don't trust each other anymore. The USSR really was afraid of the capitalist Western countries like us. And then at the same time, the United States, Great Britain, and France were all fearful of the rise and spread of communism. Now, neither side can be blamed for starting the Cold War. We aren't totally to blame, and the USSR is definitely not totally to blame. Each country involved in all of this definitely played their own part and could have made better decisions to prevent what's about to happen for the next 60 years. Each of these superpowers is going to be making choices throughout 1945, 46, 47, 48, and 49 that are going to impact foreign relations for the rest of the 20th century. So as we get into the Cold War here, the biggest word you're going to hear is containment. Containment is our number 1 priority when it comes to communism. We want to contain it. We want it to stay in Russia, stay in China where it is at this exact moment. We don't want it to spread any further. So if you ask yourself any time throughout the 1950s, 60s, 70s, or 80s why the United States does something, the answer is most likely to prevent the spread of communism. Why do we pass a law to prevent the spread of communism? Why do we send troops to the Middle East to prevent the spread of communism? Why do we do so many different things? It's all to prevent the spread of communism. So the United States and Great Britain believed that the newly liberated nations in Europe should have the opportunity to choose their own government because they had all previously been forced under the control of the Nazi regime. So they thought that the people of those countries deserved the right to choose the next government that was to reign over them. Obviously, Stalin opposed this plan. Since communism was horrible and everybody knew that but him, he knew that if the European countries were allowed to vote and hold elections to determine their new government, that communism would not win, and that he would lose a lot of power. Since the Soviet Union had liberated, though, a portion of Eastern European countries from the Nazis during the war, remember, once after the Battle of Stalingrad and the Soviets began to work their way through Eastern Europe, they wanted to stay present in those conquered lands. So they will have some pretty significant influence, and they're going to be basically the ones running the show in pretty much all of Eastern Europe. At the same time as all of this is happening, there is a civil war going on in Greece, causing some problems. The Communist People's Liberation Army in China is overthrowing the government and sort of being battled by Great Britain. Eventually, though, Great Britain is going to pull out because of economic troubles. And China's going to succumb to communism, and Greece is going to sort of be up for grabs as well. So in 1947, the Soviet Union offers their support of any communist rebellion, essentially, but especially the one in Greece against the Greek government, and they demanded land from Turkey. They wanted Turkish land, and they were going to support this communist revolution in Greece. We don't want that to happen, right? What's our number one goal? Prevent the spread of communism. Containment. If we allow them to support this revolution in Greece, that would spread communism. If we allow them to gain land in Turkey, that would spread communism. That is not what we want. So Harry Truman said, quote, "I believe that it must be the foreign policy of the United States to support free people who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures." What he's saying is, it should be our job to protect people from other countries trying to push them around and influence them into having one type of government or another. So essentially, he's saying that we are the ones who need to be protecting countries like Turkey and Greece from being overpowered by the Soviet Union. So he asks Congress to allow the United States to send $400 million in aid to Greece and Turkey. So we call all of this the Truman Doctrine, that idea that we want to protect countries from other countries. Sort of that general idea is called the Truman Doctrine, but what it really comes down to is we're really saying that we want to protect them from communism. So the way that you can remember that is the Truman Doctrine basically gives us $400 million worth of, I always say in my head, greasy turkey, right? We're giving $400 million worth of aid to Greece and Turkey, $400 million of greasy turkey. So the impact of all of this is that it's going to set the precedent that the United States is going to be willing to help weaker countries to prevent communist takeovers. And it also labels communism as a worldwide threat and a problem.